Every now and then in Melbourne, the trains descend into chaos. They did so relatively recently, making headlines around the state for the local public transport monopoly. And with delays and frustration with the service all too common, we have to ask the question, are Melbourne Metro going about things the wrong way? On the 14th of January, some faults caused two lines, the only just reopened Cranbourne and Pakenham arms, to be shut down and have to be replaced by buses. The fallout also meant that the Frankston line was massively delayed. Needless to say, Metro Trains copped it on social media. Hard. I was on one of the Frankston line trains and it just wasn't moving. It took us an hour and a half to go from Richmond to Melbourne. That's about 5 stations, or about 6.25 kilometres, or about the distance if you laid 27 Melbourne Metro trains end to end if you want to be a dick about it, which I do because I also directed my frustration towards Metro trains. But it's not their fault really. I understand that anything can happen at any time, and although you can prepare for the worst, there's always going to be fallout. And the most you can do is mitigate that fallout, which they did. But doing something isn't always enough, not when you're impacting your customers' lives. Because it's not solely about the issue, it's about how you manage it and bounce back from it. Melbourne Metro actually keep putting up these posters that state how good they are in terms of punctuality and reliability. Yet I do not know one person who actually thinks they're punctual or reliable. Maybe we're all too hard on them. Maybe they're just a bunch of honest cobbers trying to do a hard day's work, making the best of a bad situation. Either way, the best place to start, I thought, is to find out who we've been getting into bed with. And in the case of Melbourne Metro, it's a threesome. The largest share of Metro trains belongs to MTR Corporation, who are based in Hong Kong and have contracts all over the world. Recently, they've been at the centre of a scandal worth more than 17 billion Australian dollars. It's a scandal in Hong Kong. It's in regard to the construction of a rail line. The scandal is centred around allegations that steel bars have been shortened in substandard work practices. This presents safety concern, but gives the illusion that all the work has been done. And the controversy suddenly drew attention to the fact that there were apparently a whole heap of instances where the workers had done the same thing in the past. The prior instances had all been swept under the rug because, as they claim, they had identified the issue before they could impact anyone, and they had already asked the contractors to fix the issue, which could have been a pretty good answer had there not been several instances of falsified inspection records. MTR's corruption and fraud ended up with top execs being fired and fines being handed out, and they were even ordered to break open the foundations of some of the stations as part of the investigation into the scandal. Another player with a 20% stake in Melbourne Metro is the John Holland Group. These guys have been accused of trying to swindle their own employees. Firstly, by trying to silence naysayer employees and keep tabs on potential threats to the status quo of compliance, making sure they keep tabs on everyone who goes to rallies and union events. There's also the time that they sneakily applied enterprise bargaining agreements to every employee working on the Children's Hospital in Perth when only 3 employees actually agreed to it. Which, by that logic, I've got 3 mates who reckon I should be Prime Minister. So let's go. Australian-owned UGL Rail hold the other 20% stake, but they too have been accused of corruption and bribery. It's safe to say 2015 was not a good year for them when details of payments to city officials in Hong Kong came to light. They even had to exit the Hong Kong market the following year as a result of the fallout from the scandal. So we begin to form a bit of a picture of who Melbourne Metro really are. A dirty threesome of corruption, manipulation, authoritarianism and cross-cutting. A threesome that we, the public, have been joining every day when we need to travel. Which I guess makes it a foursome. Or maybe we're just getting gangbanged. Metro do make their data available through PTV, which does back up some of their claims, and data doesn't lie. But stats can misrepresent, depending on how you skew them and the data behind them. And there are a few crucial things that we need to keep in mind when we look at this. See, Metro love to give us two metrics in particular. You can see them on the posters that they put up. There's first of all, percentage of scheduled services met, and the second is percentage of services on time. Now these sound like the main things that you want from a train service. Is it going to get you there? When they say it will get you there. The main problem with this though is that compliance to service metrics alone doesn't reflect meeting customer needs. Factors such as altering services to meet the metrics, capacity issues and misrepresentation mean that those posters showing compliance to these service metrics don't actually mean your train is going to get you there when they say it will get you there. Not as often as they want you to believe. If you're running a train really far behind schedule and then you switch up the service into the next one halfway through, well, a cancelled service and an on-time service look a lot better on paper than 3 or 4 really delayed services. But when the customer was expecting an express and after they're on the train you tell them it's now stopping all stations and start adhering to a different schedule of a different service, it's a massive blow for those depending on it. When it happened to me a few months back, it meant that an additional 8 stops were added to my already delayed journey. And I missed an appointment by a long while. The contracts were renegotiated in 2017 and they attempted to increase performance targets and put in place heavier fines to address things like station skipping, cancellations and short stunting, which is termination before it reaches a destination. But those things have still been happening since the new contracts came in. Because the problem is that you can change up services a certain amount and you can wear that fine if it means that you're going to hit your operational performance targets, because that means bonuses. But it also means that those operational metrics you give to the public to give them confidence are actually just propaganda. People are entitled to what you promise them, regardless of whether or not it's better for you. You need to acknowledge not just the fact that you're not going to deliver them what you promised, but also the fallout that you may cause. Cancelling or adjusting one service will also mean that the next service is going to be packed. It can even throughout the entire system. How many people do you think can build up in 10 minutes, in peak hour, in the city loop? On Monday the 18th of February, there were so many people that there was barely enough room to stand on the platform at Parliament Station. And I was near the front of the mob and still had to wait for 4 trains to go past that were too full to get on. Meanwhile, the mob just kept on growing. Now, research has actually shown that 20% of all train services during the morning commute are actually overcrowded. And some lines have 40 to 50% of services impacted during that time. So when people can't get on your trains at the best of times, operational metrics are irrelevant, so they're clearly not the right performance measures to be focusing on. Now, I don't think anyone would expect metro trains to be on the list of the best public transport systems in cities across the world, but I did not expect that they'd be the worst in Australia. However, according to CanStar, they are consistently rated the worst. And customer insights data does show that sentiment is improving, but if you're covered in shit, then hosing it off is going to be improvement. It doesn't mean you're hygienic. An overall score of around 70 points out of 100, according to PTV customer ratings, leaves a lot to be desired. PTV says that there have been a lot of customer surveys done, but their idea of a lot is around 850 interviews a quarter, but that's only about 3,400 a year, or about 0.00144% of the estimated 236 million yearly ridership of metro trains. Is that enough? Either way, the current contract means it's not likely to increase much when it stipulates that additional services can be requested by the operator, but will done at their own cost. And we're talking about the company with several accusations of putting safety at risk for cost cutting. Anyway, these are all opportunities for judging whether customers hate you that Metro can improve on. However, the most pressing thing as far as I can see is the need for Metro to proactively manage the customer experience in disruption. So if we're going to try and fix anything, let's try and fix that. First of all, they need to work on communication. Tell customers something. The train driver on the 14th of January said that he didn't have any information as he was stopped on the tracks. I recall his words as, "We are waiting for answers they're not giving us." How does that make customers feel? Well, it doesn't fill them with confidence. Imagine if your dentist stopped mid-filling and said, "Yeah, we don't know what's going on. We just know we have to stop." If you're from Metro and you're thinking that I can't relate the two because they're different industries, then with that attitude, you probably have the answer as to why the customer experience is so bad. So tell your customers. But more importantly, tell your staff what's going on. Give them some information. Quite clearly, there was enough information to know that there was an issue and trains needed to stop. Give them something they can use to put your customers at ease. They have the capability for the control centre to do announcements on all trains. They already have that. So the part that needs work now is the flow of information back there. And the ability to create lines in real time that they can use. And this flows into the next point, which is integrity. Make sure the people that seemingly do have the right answers give the right information. The directive from Metro on January 14 was that if you're on Cranbourne and Pakenham lines, then take a Frankston train and then get a bus at Caulfield. However, that direction was given partway through the stage that Frankston trains were delayed for more than an hour, so matters were made even worse. It was a similar situation on February 20th, when the train stopped at platform 4 on South Yarra, which delayed my journey for more than 30 minutes. The driver didn't know why we were stopped, but he said he wasn't allowed to proceed. At this stage, the station was broadcasting over their PA that all trains on that line were now departing from platform 6. So upon an announcement from the control centre, we also moved to platform 6, where the station announced that the next Frankston Express was departing from there. But after boarding, we discovered that it was actually now going to stop all stations. So here we have the first driver with different information to the station, who have different information to other drivers picking people up. Someone knew what was going on for all three of these things. Metro needed the processes to align everyone on that information as fast as possible. Then we come to the fix. And maybe you can fix the issue reasonably quickly, which, to all credit, they did fix it overnight. But a big part of that is going to be understanding that customers are going to hate you because you've massively let them down. So acknowledge that and start trying to bounce back from it. For some people, putting yourself in the customer's shoes is going to be easy. But for others, it doesn't come until you're there in the moment, realizing how incompetent a company can be. If we look at how bad these customers were impacted, we've got delays, which sucks, but they've allowed people to claim back one trip on their Myki travel card. People are still angry though, because we need to ask, what are the effects of the delays? Have they missed something important? Or something that cost them money? Maybe an appointment or childcare? Was everyone just delayed? Well, no, because we know that some people couldn't even get into the stations because of the crowding. And there were those who suspected it would take hours. Those people found other methods of transport. Ubers or taxis, which would have cost a lot. But can you blame them when even the staff had no idea what was going on? Metro obviously did blame them because none of these things were considered in reimbursement to customers. Also, they put the onus on the customer, which is never a good way to get people to like you. They want you to ask for the $4 they owe you back. It's so that they can verify you actually took the train that day. But seriously, if you have the data to validate, then you have the data to be able to proactively reimburse. And we could go on to a lot more points, but these are just the basics that Metro are missing. Communication with integrity and proper remediation are usually the norm when it comes to fixing an issue. We can see a lot of examples of this looking back on situations like when Telstra's service went out and they offered a free data day to proactively give angry customers something back. It may be because they have no competition. However, Adelaide's public transport had an outage and they offered a day of free travel. So identifying the right thing to do for your customers should have nothing to do with whether or not you have competition. Unlike those that have competition though, the drive for the need to go that extra mile and fix gaps for customers is made harder when there is one provider. That means that it's up to the government to enforce it, to negotiate contracts that reprimand service providers that fail, to ensure contracts are negotiated in a competitive tender, and to ensure that customers are getting back what they're entitled. The problem is that the Andrews Labor government and Public Transport Minister Melissa Horne are not doing that. Have you noticed how Metro don't put up those self-promoting posters about how good they are every month? Or maybe that's because in 2018, they only hit their target of 92% 6 times. It's okay though, because of this they were reprimanded $750,000. Somehow though, it still meant that they were awarded $6 million in bonuses. Kind of discerning that considering that at least once a year there is a major disruption like the one recently. And there are far more unpublicised delays over any given week. So while it is Metro Trains' fault, it's also largely the fault of the Andrews State government. And I don't know about you, but giving my dogs treats when they do something wrong only makes them think that doing the wrong thing is okay. The Andrews government need to be held accountable by the public for Melbourne Metro because they created the $7 billion 7-year contract behind closed doors without a competitive tender process. The response I got when I questioned the Transport Minister's office on this was that it was because they had the option for the exclusive tender built into the old contract if they hit their performance targets. But if it was known at the time of renegotiation that station skipping and cancellation issues needed to be addressed, then could it not have likely been argued that they didn't fulfill the passenger experience component of the contract and therefore shouldn't have the option to renegotiate? At the very least, there could have been some proper accountability built into place. Maybe it's that the Andrews government doesn't give a shit about the commuters in Melbourne. Hashtag, you can go your own way. You can go your own way. Go your own way. Or maybe it's time to bring in someone new. It's time to go Metro. Shake, 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 yeah, shake, shake. It's time to go Metro. Get out right now. It's the end of you and me. It's too late and I can't wait for you to be gone. Or we can build Metro to be better, push harder for getting customers where they need to, when they need to, and we can fix Melbourne's public transport. Now the good thing is that we can fix Melbourne's Metro trains. Because according to the contract, PTV can propose modifications to the passenger experience plan, which need to be considered and updated by the operator with agreement from PTV. Also, the Victorian Fares and Ticketing Manual is governed by the state, So things like refunds and free travel can be taken care of that way should things go awry. Now, it's not going to be simple, and we're unlikely to get what's really needed, but it'll be a start, up until the contract is up in 2024. The only question left is going to be, when do we begin?